What is going on, baseball fans? Welcome to This Week in Baseball, presented by Diamond Digest. This is episode 11 of Season 2. Got a great crew on. I'm your host, Jordan Lazowski, but I am far more interested in what our crew's going to have to say tonight. We've got Andrew Horwath, who is a familiar face, but I think this is your first time on this season, though.
Yeah, first time this season.
And we also have two semi-new faces to Diamond Digest, Maddox and Luke Psyhogios. I will let each of them introduce themselves a little bit, and after that, we'll get into the show. So let's start with you, Luke.
What's up? My name's Luke. I'm a huge White Sox fan, huge Yoan Moncada defender, and I've been here at Diamond Digest for a couple months now, and yeah, just love to talk baseball. Excited to be here.
Hey, y'all, I'm Maddox. I'm from the Chicago suburbs, but a huge Mets fan. Both my parents were born in New York. I recently graduated from UW-Madison with a degree in conservation biology, and this is my first year with the Diamond Digest team.
Are we all currently in Chicago?
I'm in Madison.
Oh, so
I'm
cool. Okay. Well, we have a very heavy Chicago White Sox fan podcast, but unfortunately not much on the docket about the White Sox for the first time in a while, kind of thankfully. We'll go through the standings update per usual. We record this Sunday night, so if anything changes mid-Sunday night baseball, it usually doesn't, but just as a disclaimer, around the league in 60 seconds, these fine gentlemen will each give their recap of the week that they want to make sure we highlight. We'll go through seventh inning stretch. We got a little bit of everything. I know the big talk again this week, kind of like it was last week, was foreign substance use, so we'll go through that, spend a lot of time there. We'll wrap up with what to watch for this week, and nothing too crazy, nothing too different than usual. So let's just jump right in. If the season ended today, here's what the standings would look like. In the AL East, the Boston Red Sox still atop the division by just a half game over the Rays. The White Sox lead the AL Central by 2.5 games over Cleveland, who lost Josh Naylor today for a significant amount of time. That was a scary, brutal injury. Hopefully it doesn't affect him long term. I mean, that kind of stuff sucks. In the West, Houston is leading the division by 2 games over Oakland. Your 2 wild card teams out there would be the Tampa Bay Rays and the Oakland Athletics. In the National League, the Mets remain atop the East. They are the only team above 500 out in the NL East. The Milwaukee Brewers have taken a little bit of a lead in the NL Central, 2.5 games over the Cubs. And the Giants are the first team to 50 wins in baseball this year. They lead the NL West by 4 games over the Los Angeles Dodgers. Your 2 wild card teams out there, those aforementioned Los Angeles Dodgers, as well as the San Diego Padres, who at 47-33, having a great year, find themselves 4.5 games out in their own division and 9-1 in their last 10 games. It sucks to be a team in the NL West this year. I think that continues to be the biggest takeaway is you've got a lot of good competition out there, and the Giants, and you knew that coming in, but the Giants just continue to be a team that you didn't see that coming. The disparity between the top 3 and the bottom 2 teams is incredible. I'll turn it over to you guys, though. Any big takeaways from the standings? I don't think there's too much, just because things haven't changed much in the past couple weeks. The Giants continue to surprise.
The Diamondbacks finally won a road game.
And they finally won a road game, yes. I haven't kept up with that too much. I'll just see it on Twitter and stuff. It's like, I would not want to be a fan right now. And it's not even for a lack of talent either. It's a good ball club. And it's not, let's be honest, it's not 22-57 bad. At the very least.
So, they've got good pieces on that team. Yeah.
Yeah. So that team will be ripe as the trade deadline starts to loom over us and develop in the coming weeks. But let's go into around the league in 60 seconds. Each of the panelists will give their recap, some things they want to make sure we highlight that maybe necessarily won't come up in 7th inning stretch. And we can talk about a little bit of those. We will start with the quote-unquote veteran of the group, and we'll go with Andrew.
It was a very disappointing week for Shohei Ohtani. I mean, he only hit 352, 450, 941 with 2 homers, a stolen base. Oh, yeah, and he pitched 6 innings, allowed only 1 run, struck out 9 batters. Top prospect Jarred Kelenic, he's been down in AAA, and he's been on fire. He had a game where he had 4 hits, and then another game he had 2 home runs. I think that it's going to take – I think the Mariners are definitely going to want to see him keep this going in AAA, maybe 2-3 more weeks before they call him back up again. And then obviously top prospect Wander Franco made his debut, hit a home run, I think in his first or second game of the season, and that's going to be a really exciting player to watch. And then also I got to talk about the hometown White Sox. What are they waiting for? I mean, we got to make a trade. Eduardo Escobar, we talked about the Diamondbacks. There's at least 2 or 3 guys, I think, on the Diamondbacks that would make sense. Maybe a Ketel Marte that might cost too much. David Peralta, his contract's ending soon. Maybe a reliever like Joaquin Soria. He could come back to the White Sox.
A lot of too familiar names. Eduardo Escobar, Joaquin Soria. It's a lot of very familiar names. It's like it's kind of like the Yomer Sanchez. It brings me back to a day in White Sox history that I don't want to remember those times. But Ohtani continues to just be one of the most impressive people I've ever seen play baseball. I think today he homered against the Rays, and 95-mile-an-hour fastball in on his hands. He takes it out to left field, and it hit it pretty deep out there too. It's an impressive showing. I think he's been everything you probably would have expected when he first came over, and then some. It's phenomenal. Let's go to Maddox.
All right. Well, like Shohei Ohtani, Vlad Jr. continues to mash. He's leading the league in homers still. I believe he's up to 26 now, and it's not even July, so he's certainly on 50 homer watch. Also with the home runs, Kyle Schwarber hit, I believe, 7 this week, including 5 in 2 games against the Mets. The Phillies bullpen was awful this week. They lost a game 13-12 to the Nationals, which was one of 4 one-run losses that their bullpen blew. The Astros offense is the best in baseball by far, and their pitching might make them the best team in baseball, but they did just lose a series to the Tigers and AJ Hinch, which is a nice little revenge win for him.
The Astros are an interesting story. I was very impressed watching them last week against the White Sox. I think it feels like they were underrated of sorts coming in. I know that's weird to say for a team like the Houston Astros, but I think I might have, at least personally, overlooked what a pain they were going to be for other teams in the AL this year, which good on them. Continuing to do your thing, continuing to make your window as wide as possible. Like, impressive stuff there. So,
Yep.
Yeah. Luke.
Staying in the AL West, the Oakland Athletics are only 2 games back of the Astros, despite having a 34-run differential compared to the Astros 142. I think that race is really interesting because it just seems like the Astros have played so much better. They're the only team to score 400 runs, and they've scored 442. So they're just killing it offensively, and pitching-wise, they've been great too. Mike Soroka went down again with the Achilles. And that's really sad to hear for the Braves. They seem like they're in a really tough spot now as a club. They're 3 games under 500, with the Mets looking pretty good, even though they're beaten up. They're 40-33. It'll be interesting to see what they do at the deadline, buy or sell.
Some brutal. And this one isn't an arm issue for Soroka as much, just because it's the Achilles, obviously. Some brutal injuries this year for pitchers, for even some hitters. It's frustrating to see this currently. I think the game's at its best when all of its stars are healthy, and we're at a point where not all of the stars are healthy, and it's clearly it has a big impact on teams. As I don't think anyone would underestimate that, but I think it's frustrating to see something like that, and even like I said, Naylor today, like just freak injuries, accident. It sucks. It's maybe it's just because we're so hyper focused on it because now we had a 60-game season, now 162, but it feels like this year there feels like there's a lot more injuries. That might be pure speculation, but I don't know. I wish people could stay healthy as a White Sox fan. Trust me.
Yeah.
But
Same here.
What else? And I think you guys did a great job covering this. I think you took us a little bit everywhere. I think the biggest thing, I was reading the standings off. I was surprised to see the Brewers in first. I'm gonna be interested to see how long that holds out there. I think took advantage of a rough stretch for the Cubs having to go against the Dodgers, but we'll see what happens out there. Let's jump into it, though. 7th inning stretch, our main segment. I will pull up the scoreboard. You guys know the drill. 7 questions. Arbitrary point system. Awarded by me and me only. And here we go. This week was the first week in which Major League Baseball enforced their new foreign substance use rule for pitchers. We've seen some awesome reactions from guys like Max Scherzer. And we've also seen our first ejection. Coming out of the game today, Hector Santiago of the Seattle Mariners, they found what they deemed a sticky substance on the inside of his glove. We were later told there was a mix of sweat and rosin that created it, and it will obviously be subject to Major League Baseball determination from that point. My question to you is, what are your thoughts on the rule implementation to date? Good, bad, indifferent? Your thoughts. We will start with Luke.
I'd say I'm pretty indifferent. I think this is something MLB should have taken care of over the offseason. It seems like what they've done so far is just kind of expect pitchers to just go from using whatever they want to, now you can't use anything. I think what Tyler Glasnow said really still rings true, that they can't just expect these pitchers to stop using what they've known for years now. And we're seeing great stars like Garrett Cole, get shelled against the Red Sox today. And these are just things that we likely wouldn't see without these inspections.
Maddox?
Yeah, I agree with Luke. I'm pretty indifferent to the whole inspection aspect. I think MLB really did butcher it by just implementing it in the middle of the season. But as far as the inspections have gone, I think they're essentially accomplishing what they're trying to accomplish. How they handled it was really botched, but I mean, they wanted the pitchers to police themselves. They said, we're going to check you when you come out, stop using sticky stuff. And for the most part, it seems like pitchers have. It has the potential to increase offense. Devin Fink with Fangraphs wrote a great article on higher spin rate fastballs being harder to hit. So I think I can see what MLB was trying to do. Like Spider Tack has to go, certainly, but they really botched it doing it mid-season. So.
Andrew.
I mean, yeah, just like these guys, I mean, I like the rule. I like that they're cracking down on it. Obviously, the timing is not great. I feel like, just like how there was supposed to be the rule, I think in 2015, where batters were supposed to stay in the box. I feel like this is something that's not going to be enforced throughout the rest of the season. Like, are the umpires really going to check every single pitcher, every single game the rest of the season? I don't really think they are. And another thing, too, is like this was already a rule in place. So it's like, they didn't enforce it already. What's going to make them enforce it now? And another thing is the umpires, you're putting them in a bad situation. I'm sure like certain umpires might check, like I've seen certain umpires check a player's belt, a hat, their glove, and some umps only check like their hat and their glove. So it's like, it's not even across the board. And I think there's going to be a lot of a gray area to it.
I think part of that gray area you're talking about is what's considered a quote-unquote foreign sticky substance. Because if it's true that Hector Santiago only used sweat and rosin, and that's what created that sticky substance, quote-unquote, like those are both legal things. And Trevor Bauer actually put out a video where he kind of did that exact same thing. He mixed water, rosin, sweat, and rosin. It's like, I can make it sticky. Like, is this okay? Because now you have a situation where you're throwing pitchers, it would have been different, I think, if Santiago wasn't coming out of the game, like being relieved. But if he gets caught after maybe leaving the second inning and they throw him out for that. Well, both of those things are legal. So where's that line? Like, how are you going to make sure that line isn't crossed? I think the gray area, Andrew, you mentioned, is incredibly important.
One thing that I think would be interesting to see is, like, obviously Santiago's not going to be suspended for 10 games. Is, let's say, like, the Mariners have 2 other pitchers get suspended and you can't replace them on the roster. So then they're screwed for like a week and a half. What are they going to do? Are they going to just send down 2 of their bench players and go with like just a backup catcher and 1 utility guy? I mean, this is going to be interesting, and that could also increase injuries for the pitchers if, 9 pitchers have to carry a week and a half's work of innings.
Right.
I also think it's sort of sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I also think it's important to note like the timing of this upsetting the players so much. Like with collective bargaining coming up this offseason, it's going to be a real problem that they're going to need to fix. I don't think we're going to have the same ball next year. I don't think they're going to need to do something to get some sort of tack on.
And it's interesting to hear it from the players' perspective. Like, I think I can't remember who it was who basically said like they changed the ball based on what the free agency pool kind of looks like. If a bunch of pitchers
Pete Alonso,
Pete Alonso, thank you. It's like if you got a bunch of pitchers coming up soon, you're gonna use the bouncy balls, so it kind of deflates their salary value. It's like now whether or not that's true is one thing, but for players to think that and just have this foreign substance use on top of it. And that's just a whole issue of its own. It's like whether or not it's true, players think that. Like that's an issue for Major League Baseball to try and solve. Let's go to inning 2. Let me pull this back up. Today, Major League Baseball released the results of its first round of All-Star Game fan voting. Your thoughts on the fan vote? I know it's always a contentious topic. Who is or are the biggest snubs to this point? And who's gotten the most votes that you feel should not have? We'll start with Maddox.
The biggest snub, I think, is Javi Baez getting in over Trey Turner. Trey Turner, I believe, is second in F4 among shortstops behind Correa. But Baez has been below league average offensively. He's still an elite defender, but Trey Turner is an all-around shortstop that deserves to be an all-star. The other biggest snub, I would say, is Brian Reynolds. He's absolutely mashing in Pittsburgh, and no one cares because it's Pittsburgh. And that's how the fan vote works, unfortunately, but he absolutely deserves to be in that game as well.
The good news is Pittsburgh is so bad, they'll probably, with the you have to have one person from every team rule, they'll probably end up there. So that's at least the good news.
He will. Yes.
Luke.
I have a couple snubs and a couple guys that I was surprised got a lot of votes. First for snubs, Tyler O'Neill. I was just really surprised to see he didn't make it. He's been awesome this year. He's a 141 WRC plus, but worth 1.9 F4. And he plays for a team with a great fan base, and so I was kind of surprised to see on the other side Jock Peterson make it. He has a 100 WRC plus. He's been worth 0.4 wins above replacement. So I don't really see why Jock Peterson got in over Tyler O'Neill. Another one that I think people aren't talking about as much is Alex Bregman getting in over Jose Ramirez. That was pretty surprising to me. Jose Ramirez has been worth 1.2 more wins. And they've been pretty similar on a rate basis as hitters. Jose Ramirez is at a 127 WRC plus. Alex Bregman is at the 120. But Jose Ramirez also has 3 outs above average, where Alex Bregman has 0. So they've been similar hitters, but Jose Ramirez has been on the field more, and he's been a much better defender. So,
Andrew?
Yeah, I think this year, I think the All-Star voting, I think it's getting much, much better. I remember, I think it was the 15 and 16 All-Star games where it was a bunch of Cubs starters, a bunch of Royal starters, and Alcides Escobar was the starting shortstop, and he probably wasn't even the 10th best shortstop in the American League. So I think voting overall has gotten better. You can't really complain. As long as if the starter, if the starter For the All-Star game, if he should actually make the All-Star team, like that's fine. Like if the guy that should be starting is on the bench, like I don't really have a problem with if he's starting, if he's on the bench. Who really cares as long as he makes the All-Star team? When it comes to the snubs, I would say like obviously Kyle Schwarber's had a really hot week. Obviously that's since it's the last week that he's obviously not going to get like a huge bandwagon behind him. And I would say Mark Canha as well. He's got like a 400 on base or close to it. And then like also Austin Riley of the Braves at third base. He's had a really nice season. So it's good to see him get back to what he did in like his first month of his major league career.
Fan voting continues to amaze me. I don't know why. I think things are going to be different every time. They never are. AL catcher has thrown me for a curveball with the first two,
So
Yasmani
bad.
Grandal and Salvador Perez are probably all-stars. You look at some of their numbers, that's like those are a fine two, and then you have Martin Maldonado, who really doesn't even belong in the same conversation as those two. And it's like, what are we doing here, folks? Like, and it's not for the rate stats. It's not for anything other than the Astros fan base got behind them. Like that was one where I looked at him like, one of these is not like the other. And especially Mike Zunino leads, I think, all AL catchers in F4. Maybe Sean Murphy might actually have him beat, but it's like, those are two names that don't even show up near the top of the map. That I don't know. Catching's such an odd position. I think if you're someone who looks at your typical average home runs, RBIs, like you're going to look at the catching group and be like, I have to pick from one of these. And some of the value is missed there. AL catcher is fun to me. And catcher in general is fun to me because NL's a bit different just because Buster Posey's having such a great year, but things are wild with fan voting. You guys hit most of the snubs and all that from my perspective, though. But
I do have one more snub. Matt
Yeah.
Olsen is being snubbed.
Yeah.
He is the best first baseman in the league behind Vlad Jr. so far this year, I would say, and he's not getting the love he deserves.
did we know where he's ranked currently for the fan voting? Not that it matters at this point, but
Must have
Don't
been
know
four.
where he's ranked. I just have the finalists pulled up.
okay. I'm surprised. No, I
But
agree
yeah.
with Matt Olson, though.
He has a 170 WRC plus, and only Vlad Jr. is higher.
That's impressive. I mean, I don't know. I've long tried to figure out what I would like for a different system for fan voting, but it feels like you got to keep the fans in it somehow, which is how we end up where we are. So,
What about like a ranking system, like a 1, 2, 3 or 1 through 5?
that would be cool. You rank the catchers, and then it kind of all averages itself out. That would be interesting.
Then you're
I
forced
think
to
that would
pick
help
player.
that would help teams with
You're
like
forced-
smaller fan bases. Like I feel like Mike Zunino, Matt Olson, who we brought up, they're not in because the Rays and A's don't have huge fan bases.
I like that. Interesting. Huh. I like it. Let's see here. Inning 3. Mike Soroka retore his Achilles this week while walking around the clubhouse, effectively ending his 2021 season. How should the Braves respond to this news, given where they are in the standings? As I mentioned before, the Mets are the only team in the NL East with a record above 500. And are you worried about the long-term effects for someone as talented as Soroka? This is stuff you hate to see happen. It's annoying as a fan to have to see something like an Achilles be such a problem for somebody. So it's frustrating from that vantage point. But we'll start with Andrew.
I think, the Braves have had a ton of injuries this year. They're still under 500, I believe. This has just been a weird year for the Braves. I think they could be a team where they slide into the postseason. I don't think it really affects their postseason odds because I don't even think Soroka was projected to come back this season. And when it comes to his long-term pitchability, I think he's going to be fine because I believe he's only 22. He's one of the youngest pitchers in the game. And to me, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. He doesn't have the best stuff or anything, but in terms of just pitching, he gets a lot of ground balls. He's a reliable starter. And he hasn't had like really any shoulder issues. So I think when it's an arm issue for a pitcher, I'm more concerned than when it's the leg. So obviously this is a terrible injury, and I think he's going to be out until like July of next year. But I think long term, Soroka is still going to be a really good pitcher.
Maddox?
I'm a little more concerned for his future than Andrew was. I agree with him that I don't think it impacts the Braves too much this year because he wasn't going to be back, probably having just had surgery on it this past offseason. But I think it's concerning. The Achilles is an extremely delicate tendon that is tough to come back from once, and his body rejected the sutures in the first surgery. And he tore it again just walking around in the clubhouse the day after taking his boot off. That's concerning. He is very young, and obviously he can come back from it, but that's a pretty bad injury to suffer twice in a year. And as far as the Braves go, their pitching is pretty thin without him. They don't really have an ace, and unless you consider Charlie Morton an ace, which he only is against the Mets. Like Sean Newcomb, their bullpen isn't great. They've got Shane Green closing games for them occasionally with his 14 ERA. Like, the outlook is bleak for their playoff chances, in my opinion. Their offense is going to need to carry them.
Luke?
Yeah, if I'm the Braves, I think the Braves are in a really tough situation. But I think if you're looking at this team at the deadline, I think you just have to realize that they're probably not going to compete this year. I don't think they have the pitching. And then with everything that happened to Marcell Ozuna, or everything that he did, and all the injuries they've had, it seems like they're on the outside looking in for sure, on the NL East and on from the wild card. The Giants are at 50 wins. It seems like two of those NL East team, NL West teams will get the two wild cards. So that's from the Braves perspective. And then for Mike Soroka, this is a guy who I think a lot of people who look at sabermetrics have been kind of critical of. He doesn't have some of the peripherals that some of the other young aces do, but he gets good results. And even if he isn't an ace, I still think he's at worst like a number 3. And I think if you're the Braves this offseason, you just have to throw a ton of money at some starters and try to have Max Fried, Soroka, and Clayton Kershaw. I mean, it's unlikely that they get him away from the Dodgers, but if they can just get like a good, solid front 3 of the rotation, I think they'll be in a good position to compete next year.
I think the big thing is, on paper, that's such a good team. And, I mean, offensively, it's fantastic. And it has just not been, even the past few years, it hasn't been what you expected it to be, if you're a Braves fan, at least in my perspective. Certainly sucks to see Soroka have to go through this. I know. I can't imagine tearing it once, much less the pain of tearing it twice. So hopefully his recovery is speedy and is successful, most importantly, other than anything else. This is my question that I am most excited for. Inning 4, fact or fiction, the Yankees should be pretty worried about Garrett Cole. For anyone curious, Garrett Cole's spin rates have been drastically down across this past couple starts with this change in Ford and Substance use, kind of confirming what a lot of fans probably thought. He was using something. For some pitchers, we've seen cases where, their spin rate is down, but their stuff isn't affected in terms of the movement on it. However, Garrett Cole isn't getting some of that rise on his fastball. It's obvious in the numbers, and it goes beyond just the raw spin rate. There's the movement behind it that's an issue too. Hopefully I didn't steal anyone's thunder there. Wanted to explain the situation. I will start with Luke.
Yeah, if I'm the Yankees, I'm extremely worried about Garrett Cole. In June, he was only worth 0.1 wins above replacement, and his K- walk percentage was only at a 19.8, which is, only that's like pretty good for most starters. But, this is a guy from in April and May, he had a 29.7 K minus walk percentage. Like he is, really the only guy that can rival DeGrom for best pitcher in the league. And the Yankees paid him like that, giving him 9 years, $324 million. And that is a large investment, especially for a starting pitcher. And to see this kind of shaky start without the sticky stuff is really concerning for them going forward, especially if this offseason MLB like really takes a look at the whatever's going on and really cracks down, like tries to eliminate as much as they can. The Yankees are kind of screwed for the next 7 years. But he has gotten amazing results. 2019 was one of the best pitching seasons ever. So there is obviously reason to not be worried.
Maddox?
As much as I want to say they should be really worried, I don't think they should be all that worried. I think Yankee fans should maybe be worried that he's not going to be as dominant as they hoped, and that their owner won't spend the money to supplement the rotation 2 through 5. But the fact is he's still a good pitcher. He still throws 97. He's still got some pretty nasty breaking stuff. Like he may get dinged up from start to start, but I think he had a 2.4 ERA coming into today since they announced the crackdown, which is still obviously a very good number to post in the league. And as far as the contract goes, not many 9-year, $350 million contracts end up working out the last 3 years. So they might have to eat some money at the end of that, but Steinbrenner is well capable of doing that. And that's what Yankee fans should be concerned about.
Andrew?
I'm going to say fact. And this is solely based on the high standards that the Yankees have and Garrett Cole has. You're paying Garrett Cole $300 million, not just to be the best pitcher on your team or the best pitcher in your division, but to be the best pitcher probably in the American League or all of baseball. Obviously, we saw what he did in 2019 postseason, and he was like really, really good. So I think like Cole, obviously the spin rates have dropped a lot. I still think he's going to be a really good pitcher. But, you want him to be the best pitcher. You want, when he takes them on in the postseason, you want to know this is our day, we're winning the ball game. And, if you just watched his interview and the fact that he was stumbling over his words, he couldn't really answer the question with a straight face, with the honest answer. That to me is concerning. That shows that he was using the substances and that his numbers are definitely going to decrease. I mean, obviously we saw today he got hammered by the Red Sox. I think he gave up like 3 home runs. So I would definitely be concerned because, again, the Yankees this year too have not had great pitching. Kluber's probably done for the rest of the season. Herman and Montgomery have been shaky. So it's, the Yankees need that ace of Garrett Cole, because if they don't have him, I'm really worried for what they're going to do during the rest of his contract.
I think it's meant to be a very hot debate topic when written. I think part of it is the fact of the contract. I think that's the biggest part. I think, Maddox, like you said, you're going to regret at least a couple of the years in that contract. You don't want to regret anything in the first 3, 4, or 5. And certainly if you're not pitching like a $30 million pitcher, it'll hurt other teams more than it'll hurt the Yankees by certain means. But I'm most concerned in terms of just trying to see, again, if the spin rate goes down, that's one thing. But it's like, how much of that was can that be attributed to movement? And we've seen a little less rise on the fastball for Cole. So that's where you start to see it's a little bit different. For example, I think it was Dylan Cease. His spin rates were down drastically, but it's like the pitch was still moving the same. So it's like if you were using something, it wasn't helping you as much. And it's trying to figure out where that line is for pitchers still. I think that's going to be a very good research topic for a lot of smart baseball fans over the next couple months. Inning 5. The Blue Jays received some reinforcements this week as George Springer made his return to the lineup for the first time since May. They've won 3 of the first 4 games that Springer has been back, also playing the Marlins and Orioles, however. Will Springer's return to the lineup be enough to vault the Jays to the top of the AL East over teams like the Red Sox and the Rays? We will start with Maddox.
I'm going to go with no. I think that they have the offensive firepower even without Springer. They have the second best offense in baseball by OPS behind the Astros. But unless they make a move at the deadline for at least a number two starter, I think that their team lacks a little pitching, both front end and back end. They don't have a true bona fide ace this year, at least not the way Hyun-Jin Ryu is pitching. And the Rays are really good. Shane Bloom put on a masterclass this year, and the Red Sox are somehow good. And I'm not totally sold on the Yankees being bad. They're still a pretty good ball club, I think, with a lot of money and resources and players getting healthy. So I think that division's going to be a dogfight, and the Jays are a pretty young team that I think is not going to pull out this year.
It's a great point about the Red Sox. They were the fourth worst, whatever. They got the fourth overall pick, something like that. They're top 5 pick, and now all of a sudden they're one of the best teams in baseball again. Yeah, that's a masterclass right there.
Yeah.
They're gonna end up with some real good friggin' guy, and it's like you don't need that. Andrew?
I agree with Maddox. I think definitely no. I think that, the Blue Jays would be about the 4th best team overall in the division. I think the Rays are definitely better, Red Sox and Yankees. The Blue Jays, they do have a good lineup, but their pitching is really, really bad. Their starting pitching, Robbie Reyes had a really surprising year. I like Hyun-Jin Ryu, but he's obviously had a lot of health issues in his career. Some of the younger guys like Nate Pearson's had health issues too this year, although he has been pitching in AAA recently. But their bullpen is really bad this year. I mean, they had like Trent Thornton. I think he was like a wild pitch that they got walked off on the other day. I mean, that's just not good because Trent Thornton's a failed starter. Tyler Chatwood is back to his old ways. Tyler Walkwood. Jordan Romano's had time on the IL, and Rafael Dolis hasn't been as good as he was last year. So I think they definitely got to trade for 2 relievers and probably even a starter as well to be considered. With the Yankees, Red Sox, and Rays. So I think they could stack the lineup with Springer, and they could bring in another bat and another bat. I don't really think that they're going to be competitive. Stacking your lineup. I think they have to get pitching.
Luke?
I don't think the Blue Jays are going to compete, or I don't think they're gonna win the AL East, but I think they definitely could snag a wild card spot. They've been a bit unlucky, it seems, from a run differential to win percentage standpoint. I mean, their expected win-loss is 44-32, and they're at 40-36. They've scored almost 70 more runs than the Yankees, and the Yankees are only 0.5 games back of them. But I do think Tampa Bay is still a great team, and Boston's been surprising, very good still, and I think the Yankees will be much better in the second half. But I think they've also been very hurt with Julian Merriweather also got hurt, and now they have Springer coming back. I think if they hit some positive variance with the bullpen and maybe they go out and get a reliever or two, I think the team is definitely good enough to get a wild card spot over the A's or over a second AL East team.
I think it's interesting to watch that team because it kind of confirms what a lot of us probably said at the beginning of the season. It's like that lineup's going to destroy everyone in their path, but it's up to the pitching staff to keep up the pace. And at times you've seen that from them, and at times you haven't. And it takes a young, really impressive team and kind of ruins it a little bit when you don't have the pitching reinforcements to back it up. Now, guys like Nate Pearson will make a huge difference, but is it a big enough difference? I don't know. It's going to be hard to jump at least the Rays and the Yankees. I'm still not convinced the Red Sox aren't just going to fizzle out with their pitching staff. But you still got 2 tough teams to hop. It doesn't get easier from here for them.
Chris Sale threw a sim game the other day.
That's a good point. Chris Sale did throw the sim game, and that might be the one reason why I'm like, I'm not totally convinced they won't fizzle out, but I'm not ready to say that they will because of a guy like Chris Sale. Like, no one's adding Chris Sale to their team at the deadline. There's only one team that can do that. So, Inning 6, the Cubs did something quite unique this week, throwing the first combined no-hitter in team history. Do you still get excited for combined no-hitters versus your standard no-hitter, perfect game? Do they hold your interest? I'm curious about this one because I think it's been a topic of conversation recently. We will start with Luke.
Yeah, in all honesty, I think combined no-hitters never really piqued my interest too much. I thought it was cool, but if I got like a notification that the team was throwing combined no-hitter in the 8th inning, I wasn't usually turning it on. But if it's one player, then I am. And that combined with just all the no-hitters this year, I mean, it seems like a nightly occurrence at this point. I just am not that. I'm not as interested as I was before this season. I think I've always really loved no-hitters and perfect games. Like, I think just watching them is so special. But after Rodon's this season, as a White Sox fan, that was really exciting. But after that, it just seems like they were far too frequent, and they just didn't get me as excited as they once did.
It's an interesting point. I think I don't know. I have been a tad desensitized to them, which is upsetting because they're still incredibly rare. I have become desensitized though. So Maddox.
I agree with Luke. I think this year in general has sort of desensitized us all to no-hitters, but in general, the combined no-hitter doesn't really do it for me. I mean, they had 4 pitchers and walked 8 batters in that game. Like, I don't really want to watch that. And the icing on top of the cake is the players didn't even know. Like, Craig Kimbrell was about to get hugged, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like, after finishing the game, and they were like, "We had no idea we were no hitting." That's not that special.
That's the one. Like every pitcher kind of says that, or they'll always say, "Oh yeah, I didn't know I was throwing one." That's one I legitimately believe that they mean that when they said it. Whereas I like a pitcher go, "Oh, I didn't really remember I had one, or didn't realize I had one until the 7th." But these guys, it's like there were so many base runners. I legitimately believe they did not know, which is insane.
All 3 of them came in and said we had no idea.
Right. Like I said, I legitimately believe that.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah, to me, they're definitely not the same as one pitcher, dueling it out. Another thing too with these, we're talking about multiple pitchers pitching, and I know Maddox just brought it up with the walks. To me, like a snow hitter with a ton of walks is not nearly as impressive with 0, 1, or 2 walks or something. And the irony of it was, I think it was the day after the combined no hitter, Edwin Jackson's no hitter. It was like the anniversary, and he literally walked like 8 or 9 batters in his no hitter. And it's just not the same because it's like, let's say you're in the 8th inning and you think about Rodon's perfect game or whatever, and let's say you're in the 6th or 7th inning, you lose the perfect game, then you could just pitch around every single batter the rest of the game. It's like, oh, you walk a guy, whatever, you still got the no hitter. So to me, it's just not the same with all the walks and all the pitchers. It should just be one pitcher and not too many walks.
I remember the absurdity of that Edwin Jackson no-hitter. It's like 150 pitchers or something. It's like that was cool and absurd. I think you're onto some though. Even among one pitcher no-hitters, there are certain tiers of them. It's like, did you walk the entire ballpark and you happen to give them no hits at the same time? It's like, that's the one thing too. But it's funny you celebrate the combined one, but poor Madison Bumgarner throws a 7-inning no-hitter this year and can't get official recognition. So
another point I want to bring up, though, is the combined perfect game, which there was a potential for that today. The Pirates' Max Kranick, who made his Major League debut, had a perfect game through 5 innings. They brought the tarp on the field, Mother Nature. And then I think Dwayne Underwood Jr. came in, and he ended up blowing the perfect game. But if it was a combined perfect game, that to me is way more interesting than a combined no-hitter.
Especially given the circumstances of that.
Yeah.
He forced to be pulled.
Yeah. That's another good point, too. I would agree with that. I definitely view a combined perfect game differently than a combined no-hitter. It's all just different tiers. They're all impressive. It's just different tiers of impressive, I think. As I sit here and I could never even imagine doing what they're doing. But Let's wrap up 7th inning stretch with inning number 7. Lars Nootbaar was called up by the Cardinals this week, meaning we've got another awesome baseball name in the big leagues. I want to know, what's the best baseball name you've ever heard? We will start with Luke, and it can be a current player, former player, someone you played with, like in high school, little league, whatever. I want to know your story here.
Mine's maybe a bit basic, but I think Cocoa Crisp is my favorite. The name is just so cool. Kind of sounds like Cocoa Krispies and then also just like the afro and like everything about him. I think he really like embodied the name too, which was cool. It's not like, old Ross Hasborn or like guys like that where it's like all you see are like grainy pictures of them. Like you saw him and you saw that hair, and he really was Cocoa Crisp.
It'd be a little bit different if I had the name Cocoa Crisp, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Andrew?
I hope I'm allowed to say this name on here, but
this will be
Johnny
good.
Dickshot.
Is this legitimate?
Yeah, Johnny Dickshot. He's actually a White Sox legend. I played with the White Sox a couple of years back in the 30s and 40s. That's just, and he's actually from Illinois as well. Johnny Dickshot.
I love it. I would have been like, you're lying to me when you said that at first, but you had the backup.
Yeah. I've seen that like on Twitter before. I'm like, wow, that's just, funny name.
That is awesome though. Maddox?
In a similar vein, I have selected Red Sox pitcher Dick Pole. Full name is Richard Henry Pole. He pitched from 1973 to 1978 for the Red Sox and the Mariners, with a career 5.05 ERA and negative 0.25 wins above replacement.
Maddox and Andrew viewed the assignment a little bit differently than Luke did today.
I had 2 categories. I had funny
that's
and
fair.
best.
That's fair. My personal favorite currently, I don't remember what it was before. It's Blaze Jordan. I love that name.
That's a good one.
I think that's like, when you think of baseball names, like, okay, I get what you're playing. Like, I know you're a star athlete. It's like, I got stuck with Jordan Lazowski. Like, it just was not meant to be. It happens. But Maddox, first time on, your first win. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You are the winner with 28 points. Andrew and Luke, 26. Close game today. I think a lot of good points made, especially around both the foreign substance talk as well as just how some teams are starting to get affected by some of these injuries and some of these returns from injuries. I think, again, we're in the middle of the season. There's a lot still being figured out, and I think as the trade deadline starts to creep closer, as even we have the draft in the next couple of weeks, I think there's going to be a lot of shifting narratives and some fun, new, interesting things to talk about too, which will be awesome. So let's head to the final stretch this week. What to watch for? Each of our panelists will give a series, a player, a team, something they think they're going to be watching all week, and they're going to tell us why and why they think you should be watching it too. We will start with today's winner. We'll go with Maddox.
All right. I actually have selected 3 series to watch for. The end of the week, the first Subway series of the year. So that should be exciting. It always is. And then 2 first-place matchups at the beginning of the week with the Giants and Dodgers and Cubs Brewers. 2 first, second-place matchups, I believe. And I'm just sort of interested to see if the Giants and Brewers can keep their distance in those divisions.
Another big test for the Giants. I think every avenue, they've sort of exceeded expectations. Now it's like, all right, now it's June. Now we know who's who, and we got to still figure out if you are who you seem to be. So I'm excited for that series too. Luke, what you watching?
More specifically about the Subway series, I'm excited to watch Garrett Cole against the Mets. Just with like all the all the dialogue about Jacob deGrom versus Garrett Cole all off season, and it's been taking place for a couple of years now, and I think this will be the first time that Garrett Cole gets to pitch with full capacity against the Mets in New York. So that'll be really cool, and also to see whether that spin rate is gonna stay where it's been the past couple of games. He's going to continue to struggle. That's something to keep an eye on. And then I'm excited for the White Sox Twins series to start off the week. And obviously the White Sox are in first place. The Twins are in last. White Sox are still 11.5 games ahead. But, I think they play 7 games before the All-Star break against each other. And Jason Benetti was talking today on the broadcast. And I thought it was really interesting what he was saying. Like, if the Twins win 6 of these, like, it's going to be a race, and the Twins are a great team. So
it's about time to start making some gaps like stick and be permanent. Sox certainly have a chance to do so. I think very early on in the season to be able to knock them out, especially heading into the All-Star break and the trade deadline, like those are 7 important games for the Sox. Yeah. Andrew, what you watching?
As a baseball fan, as a fantasy owner of this player, and having picked him to win the AL MVP, preseason, it's got to be Shohei Ohtani. He's going to pitch Wednesday in the Bronx against the Yankees. That's going to be a really interesting matchup to watch him, how he, faces a real good lineup, and obviously a great ballpark there with the fans probably, booing him and heckling him all game. And obviously just got to watch him hit, all week too. He's just so fun to watch with his speed, hitting the ball super far and hard, pitching super fast. And now he's like not, as a pitcher now he's really starting to find his control. Early on he was like walking a lot of batters, and now he's, last couple starts 0-1 or 2 walks. So it's nice to see him find his control. He's just so exciting to watch. He's honestly like my favorite player to watch ever. Man, he's so exciting.
You started the episode the same way you ended it, where it's Shohei Ohtani love. I love it. I think it's weird to say he's still underappreciated. But at the same time, like most people can't even do one of the 2 things that he's doing so well. Like you either pitch or you hit. Like you should not be able to do both things. I think as we kind of wrap up here, one piece of news coming out. I don't know how credible it is, so take it as you will as we get into your speculation season. Here from a smaller account, Dodgers Thinking Men, that popped up. Matt Beatty's early departure from today's Dodgers game might be related to a trade for the Diamondbacks' Eduardo Escobar. So his name has started to float around among both White Sox circles and apparently other circles as well. Not sure what use the Dodgers necessarily have for Eduardo Escobar. My first reaction is, did Corey Seager suffer some sort of setback and his hand injury, something like that? Just fun to throw it out there as we start the speculation season. I know Bob Nightingale got Sox fans up in arms last night when he kind of just in the middle of a tweet threw out that Eduardo Escobar will be on the White Sox at some time soon. I don't know. I don't know how much credence to give to these, but it's always fun having some it feels like every year there's a random account that pops up and breaks some news, and it's like, how did you get that? So maybe keep an eye out for that. Maybe by tomorrow this episode comes out that's old news and the trade's already done, but still would be interesting to see if anything comes of that. So, gentlemen, any last thoughts before we start to wrap up here?
I think so.
No? Wonderful. Well, that's going to do it for us then. As I pull up the ticker at the bottom, you know where to find us. The website, diamond-digest.com. The Twitter handle, @diamond_digest. Instagram, diamond.digest. Make sure to follow along on the website. Follow along all these places. I think it's always good to see some of the different opinions we got coming out. We got a huge crew, and articles are always coming out. And I know these 3 are guys who have put out their own work, who have stuff either out or coming out, or make sure to give them a follow, give them a read, and make sure to stick around because we're going to keep bringing good information to you. So thanks for listening. For Luke Psyhogios, right?
Yep.
Yes. Maddox Hill and Andrew Horwath. I was 2 for 2 with that name. I am Jordan Lazowski signing off. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your week, and we will talk to you next week. Take care.